It's the whiteout game, which means we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. Not just about the game itself. We're going to get you a preview of Penn State, Minnesota, but also a preview of the whiteout, which isn't just everyone painting their face in white and coming out and being crazy people. It's also about recruits watching that happen. So we're going to talk about who's going to be there, the BWI Daily Edition with Ryan Snyder, our best bets expert and recruiting insider. That's coming up next. There he is. It's Friday. Ryan Snyder joining the BWI Daily Edition. We can't get enough recruiting, especially right before the biggest recruiting game of the year. Ryan, how you doing?
Tired, if I'm being honest. I mean, it's one of those weeks, man. It's one of those weeks. I went to a good high school game last night. I'm happy it was a Thursday night game because there's no way I'd be going to a game tonight.
Who'd you see?
Trinity and Steel High. So Trinity has Messiah Mickens. He's a young freshman coming up. Steel High has the Irby twins, Alex and Andrew. Penn State hasn't offered the Irby twins, but they're great players. They're going to play Division I somewhere. And Messiah has an A&M offer. I don't know what an A&M offer is when you're a freshman and you've barely played. But it's clear he's going to be a good player. So I just wanted to go out and check him out. And of course, Jordan Hill is the head coach at Trinity now. So I wanted to go out there and check out the team. It was a great game, man. 35-28, went to overtime. Feel bad for the Trinity kid. He dropped it in the end zone. I felt for him. But real fun game last night.
So we got that. We'll get to some more high school stuff right now when we're talking about hundreds of players you've tried to contact this week. You and Sean Fitz have been burning up the phone lines, confirming who's coming, who's not coming. One of those players had a little bit of extra news coming into this weekend. So tell us what's going on with Tyseer Denmark.
Yeah, he's ready to end his recruitment. And what's interesting here is if I had to pick a school right now, I don't think it would be Penn State. I think it would probably be Ohio State. He's been to Ohio State twice now, and just what the Buckeyes have done, how can you argue if you're a receiver? Obviously just all the success they've had. And but here's the thing. So USC's in the mix, Tennessee, Oregon, and then of course Penn State, Ohio State. So I'll be curious to see if he makes it to USC and Tennessee. If he does, I'll consider those schools more realistic now. But right now, this feels like Penn State, Ohio State. He's coming to Penn State this weekend with mom and with grandma. And, usually when you see a lot for games like this, of course, a lot of guys come with their parents. But, bringing grandma, bringing mom. I don't know how many times those guys or those two have been on campus. I don't think it's been many, though. Every time I've seen Tyseer, he's usually coming with Jameel. He's coming with Coach Preet. He's coming with the team. So just the fact that mom and grandma are coming, it grabs my attention. This is going to be their opportunity to check out Penn State. But again, if I had to make a pick at the moment, I would probably lean towards the Buckeyes. And it really just goes back to the success that they have had at the wide receiver position. I think that's what has grabbed his attention the most. So we'll see how it shakes out. But this is going to probably be Penn State's last opportunity to impress Tyseer. Now, again, even if he makes a decision in November, can't sign for another 13 months. So let's not pretend that one's going to be completely over.
Right. And so it would be obviously a setback if that were to be the case. How much is it a benefit or a problem? As James Franklin talked about, this is not the game to bring your buddies and your high school friends and everybody else. It's family and recruits, and being realistic with people that, because there are over 100 recruits. And I know that
we have confirmed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be more than that.
You said 70 on Tuesday. I imagine it's going to be so many. Like, I guess what I'm setting up is this a bad time for mom and grandma to come? And is this a disadvantage for Penn State that it has to be this weekend, or pageantry and all those things? How would you rate those things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would say the ideal time for that would have been in the summer, right? Because you're going to get that personal time. It's just, when you do those visits in the summer, it's just about spending time with the staff and seeing the whole school and seeing all the facilities and all the ins and outs, from, learning about nutrition and academics to, what they're going to do for him from a weight perspective. I mean, Tyseer's done that. Mom and dad, or, mom, grandma, and none of his family has. So that's interesting to me. But you're coming up for a whiteout game. I mean, this is still an incredible experience. And obviously, if it's something that leaves a strong impression on them, obviously Penn State is a lot closer to home. How much will that have an impact? We'll see. So I would say it's definitely good that they're coming. If you had to like pick the perfect opportunity, I'd say it's probably more so a visit in the summer. But just getting them here and getting Tyseer on campus one more time is really important, because I don't, he said he wants to get to Tennessee and he wants to get to USC, and he's going to make a decision on Thanksgiving Day. There's not a lot of time with that. And then you add the fact that Roman Catholics, I think they're 6-1 or 7-1, something like that on the year. They're going to go to the playoffs. So, your weekends they're not going to be very many weekends in November, if any.
Right.
That's the thing. I really, if they reach the goals that they have this year as a team, I don't see how he's going to make it to Tennessee or USC, if I'm being honest. So it just sounds more like a Penn State, Ohio State battle to me. Buckeyes have the edge. From talking to people in Columbus, they seem to think Tyseer's a take. So right now you'd have to lean towards the Buckeyes, but let's see where things shake out in a week or two.
Yeah, so Penn State fans, fingers crossed, be hoping for not just a great game, but a great experience for mom and grandma. Sounds like that's going to be very important. So for Penn State fans, that we're setting up with those stakes of an Ohio State-Penn State battle for one of the top players in Pennsylvania. So let's go to the rest of them. Who you've been confirming guys throughout the week. So pull up some guys that you think are important that have been added or confirmed the last couple of days since you and Sean spoke on the Daily Edition Tuesday.
So many. This is the biggest list. I mean, it helps with Sean and I on the same team now. For many years, obviously it was just kind of myself working on it and Sean. And of course, there's definitely been times over the years where we've helped each other with those kind of things. But actually being fully on the same team and being able to split these names and regional lists up, it helps a lot. But yeah, I mean, just to put point blank, I mean, we're over 100 guys confirmed right now. And I can think of maybe one or two lists that we've ever had that are really that big. And a lot of those lists, though, we were including friends of friends and things like that, where there's none of that on this list. I mean, I was trying to count the guys before we started the show, and I didn't get a complete count until you threw it to me. But I think we're definitely over 60 or so scholarship guys. I think we're getting closer to 70 or so scholarship guys. And of course, some of these players aren't going to be able to make it, but if they do, this will be the deepest list I think we've ever seen. So let's just start with that right there.
Can I just say something to underline your point, and to bring this up? If you want to check out the full list, bluewhiteillustrated.com. It's up on the homepage. Sean Fitz wrote up the whole thing. My eyes glazed over. I looked at it. I'm like, nope, not going through this. Like, we'll get to this when there's time to like parse things out and look at stuff. But I could not get through all those names and make heads or tails of it in the time I needed to. So it's a lot of players, a lot of players.
And I mean, I was working on it this morning. Like, I think we're still missing guys, honestly, because like I go through my Twitter DM and I'm like, oh, like today I realized like, oh, we didn't have Brett Clatterball in there. He's like a really good 2025 linebacker. Just we knew he was coming. We've known him for 3 days, but there's just so many guys there. You're just going to miss them sometimes. So there's a couple of those guys we noticed. But so a couple of things I'd say. A lot of good Pennsylvania talent on the way or going to be in town. Just starting with the 2024 guys, you got Anthony Speca, you got Cam Lindsey, both really good linebackers out in Pittsburgh. You got David Papali coming up from Lancaster. I went and saw him play Joey Schlaffer last week. You got Kevin Haywood. You got a group of kids from Philadelphia, from Kenny Woosley to the Roman Catholic guys and Mikey Preston. You got Emilio Agard out in St. Joseph's Prep. There's so many of them. I mean, there's a handful of guys from Bishop McDevitt coming. Even Tyshawn Russell's an interesting 2023 wide receiver who's starting to pick up some Division I offers. So I think the total list of PA guys is somewhere around 24 or so. And out of them, it's almost all of the guys that they've offered so far. There's a ton of 2025 too, from Saka to Deshaun Burnett to Jabri Wallace-Coleman, who's committed to Georgia right now. You got Tyke Hayes. You got Zaire Mathis. Zaire Mathis is on pace to be a 5-star player potentially. So just a load of top PA talent. I mean, for the most part, all the top PA guys who aren't committed right now are going to be here this weekend. There's a couple they're missing. Quentin Martin, for example, he was supposed to be here this weekend, but he's going to go to Ohio State and then I guess come to Penn State, Ohio State next weekend, or at least that is the plan. So we'll start there with those guys. Trying to think on who's up. I mean, as far as the most talented guys, I'd say Ellis Robinson, the cornerback out of IMG Academy, originally from New Haven, Connecticut. Of course, Ellis has visited a couple times previously when he was younger. Then he decides last year to go to IMG Academy, which was a pretty good decision because he is truly an elite prospect. I mean, right now he's number 7 in the consensus, number 3 by On3, and he's got offers from everybody. I mean, you got Alabama, you got Georgia, Of course, Penn State's in there and some of the other Northeast schools. But, when it comes to those top programs down south, you got Texas, you got Florida, you got Tennessee, you got USC out west, and of course, Michigan, Notre Dame. I'm not sure if I think Ohio State's offered. That's one I wasn't sure about. But anyway, just everybody for Ellis Robinson. So getting him back is important. His last visit was literally a year ago, almost to the day. This game's going to be on the 22nd. I think the Illinois game last year was October 23rd. So I just find that interesting that it was almost exactly a year between visits. So Ellis is, as far as rankings and things like that, the top rated guy who's going to be here. When I look at guys who realistically could end up at Penn State down the road, there's 3 who stand out. Of course, Kevin Haywood, we've talked about out of Archbishop Wood. We've talked about Dominic Nichols out of Oakdale. I love that play by Ellis Robinson, by the way.
I'm having a hard time. He looks big. I just wanted to double check before I said something stupid. He's 5'11 and a half, 170. I don't know why, but on that highlight, he looks like he's about 6'2", 210. I don't know what it is.
We'll get We'll get an updated height this week. I think that number is old. I think he's a little taller than 5'11. I think that number actually goes back to his freshman year, I want to say. But we'll check in with me next Tuesday. I think that number will be different. We'll see. But let me just
derail us. But I was just like, wow, he's huge. And then I was like, whoa, that's different than what I expected.
Right. No, I think it's an old number.
I was teeing up a joke that's great, but he's going to play safety because he's so physical on film. But that's the sort of complete corner you're looking for from an athlete perspective.
I think he's closer to 6'1" now. I do believe, but we'll get back to it. But anyway, I mentioned Kevin Haywood. I mentioned Dominic Nichols. Jalen Harvey is the other one we got to mention. Those are the 3 guys that Sean Fitz, most of the guys that moved ahead of him have bigger frames, but he can really run.
So he's got snap off the edge. He's
go there. I don't know where that was. Is that us talking the other day?
I don't know what just happened.
I think that's Sean and I talking the other day.
I was as confused as you were. Luckily, it was still your voice for most of that. Oh boy! Wow.
I think you were doing that the other day while Sean and I were breaking it down in the background. So people got a little breakdown of Sean and I breaking down film there. But
for the people that watch, for the people that are watching on YouTube, this is what the color of my face is when I'm embarrassed. It clashes with the blue background. So I'm sorry for that interruption of Jalen Harley.
Well, at least we were only saying good things. We were only saying good things about him. So anyway. But Jalen, those are the 3 though. To be point now, I don't expect any of them to commit this weekend. In my eyes, I think Dominic Nichols is the closest. I really think that it could possibly happen late this year, early 2023. Kevin Haywood seems to be pretty firm and hey, I'm going to take my time with this. And then Jalen Harvey hasn't really spoken about it too much. It's just the Harvey pick, which Sean has in. I don't yet, but I mean, I trust him and I believe he's correct with Penn State leading. It's just more so that's coming from Penn State sources and they believe they're in a great position there. But Harvey hasn't really opened up about that. So if I just had to pick somebody that would make the most sense as far as a commitment within the near future, it would be Dominic Nichols. So let's see. It won't be this weekend. I've talked to all those guys about it. They seem pretty firm that they won't be deciding this weekend. So what else? I don't know. What else can we talk about this? It's just so incredibly deep.
It's overwhelming. So I guess
it is.
What's a player that you're intrigued by and you want to learn more about? Is there a name that's kind of stood out to you of either you're excited about that football player or somebody that you go, okay, I need to learn more here because I feel like there's something to gain from doing so?
There's some guys from down south that are on their way up. Chance Robinson is another. He's a wide receiver at St. Thomas Aquinas. He's teammates, of course, with King Mack and Conrad Hussey. That's intriguing to me. Is he just coming because his teammates are coming, or is there a good relationship there? He's a 2024 prospect, a 4-star player. I think he's like 200-ish in the nation or so. So, firmly in the on 300. You have another guy like Day Farmer. Rick Darius is his first name. Day is kind of his nickname. Another good wide receiver prospect from Cocoa in Florida, of course. He's ranked like 152, I think, in the consensus, and as another on 300 guy. Why are these Florida guys coming up? And honestly, will these Florida guys make it too? I mean, that's right. That's just something we've seen so many times where the Florida guys say they're coming, but they don't. I mean, another one of them is John Mitchell, for example. He's out of, I think, Jacksonville, Mandarin High School. He's a 4-star cornerback, according to On3. Will those guys make it? They are planning to make it. Penn State sources have told us they're planning to be here. And the players are telling us they're planning to be here. So I'm sure most of them will, but usually you just kind of have one or two who don't end up coming. So just kind of be curious to see there. Another one too, Max Buchanan. He's a 2025 offensive lineman who I don't really know a whole lot about. I've never really talked to anyone about him. 6'4", 275. He's got some quality offers from Florida State and UCF and a few other Southern schools. He's coming up from some Sanford, which I believe is right around the Orlando area. So there's a good group of Florida prospects coming up that are always intriguing to me. As far as a guy who I think could realistically end up here, who's very intriguing, I talked about him on Tuesday, is Anthony Specca. Specca was at the Michigan game last week. I'm pretty confident that Michigan and Penn State are his top schools. How does that dynamic work there?
Yeah.
After watching what happened to Michigan last week, now you're going to come see the White Out. Just where is he going to be? Where those two schools stand, I guess, after the past 2 weekends. So, reaching out to him this weekend or, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whenever we're able to find time, will certainly be one of the interviews that I'm most intrigued on doing.
So I just want to preemptively apologize to him and Anthony Saka.
Yeah,
I'm afraid every single time that their names come up because they're two linebackers in back-to-back classes. So from the totality of the list and down to the individual players, it seems like, and I know that this is kind of a generality, but 2024 is really, it seems like the focus of those were the players that there's going to be the most focus on as far as like the next crop of players. Is that fair? Like 2023, we know kind of the situation with how things are going there, or does it extend beyond it in 2025, or is that kind of like just kind of laying the groundwork? How does it go by class when it comes to how you view the list like this?
Oh, it's 60% 2024, maybe more.
Okay.
I don't know if it's 70%. That'd probably be, but honestly, I mean, when I'm looking at it and just scrolling through it, it takes a while to get through 2024 compared to 2025 and 2023. So I would say probably 60%. I mean, definitely over half. Maybe it's 65, 70-ish is the makeup of the list. What you brought up one other thing too. There are two 2023 guys that we're expecting to be there that we haven't talked about a ton publicly, or we've talked about a lot on message boards, but not really on YouTube. Joseph Mapui, of course, out of St. Thomas More, teammate with Zion Tracy, and then Kaveon Keys, linebacker from Richmond, Virginia, Varina. Kaveon's committed to North Carolina. We had been hearing for a week that he was going to be here, but nobody down there wanted to admit it. They finally opened up about that. I think it was pretty much yesterday, Thursday afternoon, really, we'll say. So Kaveon is expected to be here. I think it says a lot, that he's making this trip, but I think he's also very interested in Texas A&M and Auburn. That the interesting thing is neither of those schools are having great years. So how's that play on things? North Carolina's having, I guess, okay. They're having a good year offensively, a really poor year defensively. So maybe that's attractive to Kaveon. I'm not exactly sure, but and my gut right now, I guess what I would say is I just need to learn more there. My gut right now is that probably that it won't have a massive impact and how he'll end up in North Carolina, but I'd be lying if I said I had a great feel for it. So let's see where it ends up.
What's your thoughts on Mapui? Because he's one that the situation is such a thing to me. Is his relative age a factor? When you look at his highlight film and you see what he is physically, and then you go, okay, but he's also a couple years older than guys because of his situation. Does that factor in at all to you, or is it really just here are his physical tools and they're good?
Is that true, Chief Frank? I don't know if that's true as far as his age wise. I thought
you said he had to leave because he had to go to St. Thomas More because of his age.
You're right. Never mind. You're right. I do remember that. So I think he's just 1 year older, though. I don't think it's like a substantial thing. Okay. He is 1 year. I think he's 19. I think you're correct there. And when you had to leave Carroll after once you're 18, like you can't start at 18 to be a senior, I think is what it is. So I think you are right with that. I apologize. I forgot about that. So I think it's pretty simple with that. I think they like him a lot, but they want to try and find someone that they like more. And that's really kind of, and it's nothing. I don't think it's really a knock on him. It's really a knock on the whole defensive line situation as a whole, which I think we're going to talk about with this Minnesota game. They need elite talent, and he's a good talent. He's not an elite talent. And I think that's really kind of the situation for the most part. So I wouldn't be surprised if Joseph ends up in this class, but I think the mindset is, hey, let's see what happens in the coaching carousel and who comes into everything, because that's I mean, they want to shoot for as high as they possibly can when they only have 3 scholarships left, right? Because okay, I'm sorry, we're going to go on a little tangent here, but
sure,
I wasn't thinking defensive line or defensive tackle was an important issue the last couple of weeks, and then we watched that Michigan game, and then we realized, oh wait, that's why they're going for, or that's why they're looking at a Rodney Laura, because the number wise, there were some other positions that stand out more because they just have young guys there, but I don't know. I think it's very clear that they realize they need to improve the interior of their defensive line, and until they do, it's going to be an issue. Leave it at that.
Yeah, like you said, we'll get into that later, but I just think that there are certain players on the depth chart that we talk about, and there are certain guys that I don't talk about as much, but they play more than we talk about them, and they are not having the impact you would hope. And then when you factor in PJ Mustipher being gone, and there's a situation where they need, I think it's going to be a huge transfer position in the offseason as well, because none of the players that you're getting, even if they are a 5-star freshman, unless they're, the LeBlancs and the guys that we've talked about before, unless they're those guys, they're not going to come in and play day one. So that is a situation where I think that there is going to be some flux this offseason. So any last thoughts? Because we need to get to best bets today. Any last thoughts on the list? Any last thoughts on recruiting this weekend and what fans should prep themselves for?
No, I mean, I would expect a lot of kids to say a lot of great things about the White Out. They always do.
Right.
Will it lead to commitments down the road? Likely. Yeah. I mean, it's always a great environment, but you need Penn State to play well too. It's pretty important. It's one thing when kids come up and they lose to Ohio State. It's a whole different thing if they come up in this atmosphere and they lose to Minnesota, because if they lose to Minnesota, I think you'll see the crowd be pretty upset here. It's a whole different ball game than Ohio State, and you got the whole back-to-back losses thing, and there's a lot of negativity within this fan base right now. I watched it on this message boards all week, so they better have a good showing here, because it does. I do wonder if the crowd kind of gets upset and restless here, and you have all these recruits in attendance, because that doesn't normally happen when they're playing Ohio State. Like, fans accept it when they're playing Ohio State. That I don't think people will accept it when they're playing Minnesota.
Yeah, and speaking of, we'll get to that next.
Yep.
On Ryan Snyder's best bets.
I think this is going to be one of the best seasons Toledo's ever had. We'll do the official play will be -7.5 first half. Degenerate in me sometimes watches a little Hawaii, Stanford. I'll lay 12 with Stanford. Vanderbilt stinks. I had them last week against Notre Dame. That was a winner.
Mr. Snyder, here are your games this week. We've got this is from last week.
T-Frank, you're out of it today, man. It's a Friday.
Listen, here's the deal. My in-laws are coming today, so I spend a significant amount of time cleaning up the basement and sanding walls and painting things. Right. So I am. You're right. I am absolutely off my game, but I do have a good reason.
I'll run through my games here. We only got 3 of them. Well, actually, we'll do 4. But there's 3 that I really will break down. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. T. Frank's in-laws are coming. I got to get my kids from daycare. I mean, I've spent so much time working on this list this week that I've had very little time to work on gambling picks. But I will say this.
Right. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. In the last 5 years, they've come to visit 3 times. 2 of the times have been during Whiteout week. So they do it accidentally.
Right. Accidentally. You need to have a talk with your in-laws, buddy. I don't know what else to tell you. Okay, let's roll. Let's get this done. You got to you got some things to do. I'm going to take LSU over Ole Miss. Ole Miss right now is getting 2.5 in this one. LSU is at home, and give me LSU on the money line instead of the spread. You can get LSU at about -120, -125 on Friday, depending where you look. I found them at -120, and that's what I played. I think LSU has played a much better schedule so far this year compared to Ole Miss. Ole Miss has played really nobody. LSU has played way more just quality opponents. That Florida State loss was rough on them. That Tennessee loss was rough on them. But a lot of other signs in the other games that they've had shows that this is a team heading in the right direction. I really liked what I saw from LSU last week against Florida. Jaden Daniels had one of the best games of his career last week against Florida. Keyshawn Butte had one of his best games against Florida last week. And here's the stat I love. Brian Kelly, 36, 14 and 2 against the spread all time when the spread is either plus or minus 3. So basically games that are close to being a pick 'em. Whenever he's in those situations where, these games could go either way, 36, 14 and 2 all time against the spread. Give me LSU in this one. I think Ole Miss is kind of a fraud team right now. They're top 10 in the country, but they've played absolutely nobody. I mean, they barely beat Kentucky, and Kentucky had there was just a really sloppy game. I do think Ole Miss has a good run game. Quinshon Judkins, he was a Penn State recruit at one point. I should know his name a little better than that, but he's a good player, freshman on the road this week. I think he's going to struggle a bit.
So we got Purdue at Wisconsin next, plus 2.5 for the Boilermakers. Yeah,
there's a lot of stats that point to Purdue this week as this being the better team. Purdue's 14th in the country. 14th in the country. What is it? Passing. I forget what the stat was now, T. Frank. I'm sorry. I know this. I know they're 16th in the country throwing the ball compared to 88th for Wisconsin. Okay, so that one stands out a lot. And then Wisconsin is 51st in the country rushing the ball this year. I mean, Wisconsin, 51st in the country rushing the ball. I mean, what is going on there? And Purdue's defense is a quality 16th in the nation right now with rushing defense. By the way, Wisconsin's 71st in the nation in turnovers. I just think if you look at the quality of teams that Purdue's played, if you looked at who's Wisconsin played, and you really, obviously with Penn State playing Purdue earlier in the year, I've watched Purdue a good bit now in the games that have followed, and they really should have beat Syracuse. They played well in all their other games. They're 5-2 in the year compared to I think it's like 3-4 or something like that for 3-3 for Wisconsin. I just think Purdue's a better team. Yeah, Wisconsin's at home. If you can get Purdue at +3, take it. I haven't +2.5 here. I was really hoping to find a 3, but I haven't so far. But yeah, give me Purdue.
And Purdue, this is the thing, is Aiden O'Connell's not playing great so far this year. The ability to throw the ball to the other team is the exact same as it was last year, but without those receivers, without having kind of some cornerstone players, the big plays aren't there as much for Purdue. And part of that is on O'Connell, and part of that is on just the receivers not being open. So you said you were adding a bonus team that isn't on our list today. So who's that?
Oh yeah, just to make this real quick. All right, Charlotte. I don't even know if anyone knew Charlotte had a football team. Charlotte -14 against FIU. I won't break this down because no one is really going to care or probably bet this game, but FIU's just losing to everybody this year. FIU is the worst team in college football. Just the more I've been looking into it, Charlotte hasn't had a good year, but they're healthy now. This is a get-back game. This is everybody's using FIU this year as that get-right game, right? You're having sloppiness. We got FIU up next. Let's pound them. And that we saw that with UConn. We saw that with a bunch of other teams here in recent weeks. I just think this should be like a spread closer to 20 points. But, yeah, just give me Charlotte -14. And, FIU is just terrible. I said last week Oklahoma State sucks. I take it back. Oklahoma State doesn't suck. FIU sucks. They suck. Okay, let's move on.
The 49ers, picking the 49ers. I love it.
That's
so
right, the 49ers.
Let's get to our game of the week. It's the Nittany Lions. Minnesota comes in +5 in this game. A little bit surprised there. Ryan, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll let you do most of the. You've been watching more film than me. I've been annoying 16-year-olds all week trying to see if they're coming to Penn State. So I'll let you do most of the breaking down here. But hey, look, I'll get right to the point. I am 0-4 picking Penn State games this year. If I didn't have to pick Penn State games this year, I'd have a winning record. Right now, I'm 11-13 on the year. Take away those 4 Penn State games, it'd be looking a lot better. But I'm going to go with Minnesota in this one. So we can look at it 2 ways. It's either I'm reverse jinxing this and fans will be happy, or I'll finally get a win, one or the other. I don't think I can lose in that situation. But if I'm being honest, man, I'm looking at a lot of trends here that I don't think stack up well. Now, here's what I will say is if you're actually going to bet this game, I don't know how you can touch it without knowing what's going to happen with Tanner Morgan and Sean Clifford. I think it just, I don't know how you can bet this without knowing, because if Minnesota has, I don't know how to pronounce it. He's the Greek quarterback. He's a third-year player for them. He played a little bit last week. Like if that's going to be their player, Penn State better win this game. But if Tanner Morgan is playing, I think Minnesota can win this game. But just the one stat that really stands out: 113th in the nation in tackling right now. Mo Ibrahim is averaging 4.7 yards per carry after contact. I mean, they're there's a lot of other stats I can go to that do not point in Penn State's direction. T. Frank, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, so let's start with that. Ibrahim is very important to this offense. He is everything that makes it work. And that's the bad news, right? So you're facing another good running back. The good news is he does not have the same home run speed as the two running backs you saw from Michigan. So even then, there is a bit of I feel like watching Penn State's defense, at least there's going to be a cap on the damage per run, as opposed to he's just going to break it for 62 or 58. It would be somebody would have to get benched if that were the case with Muhammad Ibrahim, for him to get that free and break that many tackles to break home runs, because he's a really good running back. Vision, power, understands how to set up blocks, all of the things minus speed. So he is going to be a huge problem. He's going to keep the chains moving. And that offensive line, and I know that people probably don't care what I have to say about offensive lines after the comments I made last week about the Michigan's offensive line, but this offense is, and this is what James Franklin said earlier this week, and I think people misunderstood. This offense does what it does in a sense that they are predictable. I wrote a whole lot of words this week about schemes and offensive coordinators having concepts and foundational principles that they believe in and systems that play off of each other. That describes Kirk Ciarrocca. You didn't see it at Penn State. You did not see what Kirk Ciarrocca is at Penn State. Go back to watch 2019 and you watch Minnesota, and even if you just watch the Penn State game, and then fast forward and watch any of the games this year, the tape looks the same. They do the same things. So on that hand, this sets up better for Penn State to be able to stop the run, because they were, I firmly believe, and I've been more right than wrong over time, that they were surprised by what Michigan was doing offensively. Michigan threw him a left hook, and Penn State never recovered. Now, we talked about the defensive line. That is an issue. Players were getting pushed off the spot. Especially guys, I was told all week that you need to have Mustipher and Devon Ellis in there because they've got the beef and they'll be able to hold up at the point of attack. Go back and watch that and tell me how that went. So that's the concern, is that this particular defensive line won't be in their gaps. That was the issue last week, and whether they were forced out of their gaps or they ran themselves out of their gaps, that's going to be the issue. But when you know what's coming, and it's going to be a whole lot of outside zone, Ryan, whole lot of outside zone. As long as you're in your bleeping gap, I think Penn State can play with Minnesota, because their speed on defense will matter this week. Because outside zone is all about getting guys moving. It's about combo blocks, defeating those. The stunts that Penn State wants to use are much more effective against zone blocking when you can surprise and defeat somebody that way. But Minnesota's very good at running their system. So then it becomes like, are they going to anticipate all the things that Manny Diaz does? And will that be a problem? So I think it's an even battle this week, as opposed to last week, which I thought was an even battle, and then Michigan zagged, which is, to me, like the story of that game.
All I got to say is that was the closest you've ever gotten to swearing on this podcast. Bleeping gaps. I mean, I've said a couple bad words. I was like, whoa, look at you.
So it was very frustrating watching the film of, like, you're watching these things happen. It's like, no, you've got to be on the other side of that guy. What are you doing? Yeah. Why are you not? You are allowing him to get to the sideline. Like, oh, yeah. That was
I was going to say, all I've said like 3 times this year on this podcast, like, oh, this is the week we're going to learn about Penn State, right? Like, I mean, I've said it, I think, at like an Ohio game. I said it, I think, Auburn, and then I said it last week. I can't keep saying that. Like, I know what Penn State is now. Their O-line has slightly improved, but they're not greatly improved. If you take those 2 long runs against Ohio that Nick Singleton had, and that 1 long run against Auburn, take them away. And I know you can't take them away. I mean, he earned those. Right. But if you do, this rushing game looks a whole lot different than it does statistically right now. And I get it. A lot of other teams have those long runs, and that's why theirs are boosted too. But it's 3-4 big plays that Penn State's really had in the rushing game, and that's it. So I have serious concerns there. And I have massive concerns about the interior of this defensive line just because, and man, I wrote it this week for our magazine. In Penn State's 5 losses last year, they gave up an average of 260 some yards rushing. And of course, it was like 300 and some against Illinois, and then it was like 300 and some against Arkansas. So those boost them a lot. But I mean, even against like Michigan State, Ohio State, and Michigan, I think it was all, they were all still like 160, 180. Yeah. I mean, they're just giving up way too many rushing yards. I don't see how it is even possible that Penn State could keep Minnesota below 150 yards rushing this week, unless if the third string quarterback's in, and that's all they can focus on. So, I just when they can't stop the run, they don't win. And I'm still, if you look at my prediction, I still predicted Penn State to win, but I don't know how you could possibly take Penn State to cover to win this, because 5 is basically to win by a touchdown, or there's win by 6. I don't know how you could take Penn State this week.
There's a couple of ways to do that, and one of them is score points and make Minnesota like this is my concern, and I also picked Penn State to win, and I don't feel good about it. Like that was basically I picked them because of the whiteout.
We were all saying this in our text though too. We're like, who's going to pick Minnesota? And like none of us did, but like all of us kind of wanted to. I mean, honestly. So like, we'll see. I think I don't know. I know this is a negative podcast right now. The Penn State fans like probably are turning off on, but I just, man, when I look through some of these like PFS stats, I look through some of the other analytical stats, like nothing's really in Penn State's favor now. And boy, how much things have changed in a week.
I should care more about the size of defensive tackles and that whole conversation. I should. Like, that's not me trying to set up the butt, but like I should care more about that. I've just seen when you watch individual plays and you watch a player doing the same thing over and over again, it's not always about size. Like Hakeem Beamon, 265-pound defensive tackle, he wins a good number of reps, but he loses a lot.
He's the one winning the most, though. He's the one winning the most, though. Like no one else is, including PJ.
It's yes, and that's the thing is like he's in his gap, right? So he's in his gap, but he's not winning. He's not making difference-making plays. So if everyone's that is where be in your gap falls short, because first off, then if no one is exceeding that, everyone has to be perfect.
You can all be in your gap, and if you're getting pushed 3 yards back, sorry, I cut you off, but
but I see it's not even about being pushed 3 yards back. It's about, are you maintaining the integrity of the defense? So you lose initially to get into your gap, and then if you don't fight to get there and you try to backdoor a block, you've pulled yourself out of the gap. So but then you might win that later. And if you are a linebacker and you are coming downhill and you come downhill and the line has shifted and you don't get in your gap, you're not in your gap. So if nobody is just beating their guy off the line, and PJ's not able to do that consistently, and Hakeem is doing it, but he is wrong sometimes, or if the linebackers are wrong, you've got a very thin line, I guess, is the problem. And that's really, again, caring about size. If you were 275 pounds, you might win those outright more often. If you were 295 pounds, you might win those outright instead of losing some and winning some. But my real concern is the Penn State offense. And I spent 3,000 words talking about the Penn State offense this week.
The best story you've ever written, by the way. I didn't tell you that this week. That was the best story you've ever written.
I really appreciate it. It's the reason you haven't seen Penn State highlights from practice.
He Frank knows I work with him more than anything. I am like anal as hell on some things, and I want to give you credit for that one. That was the best story you've ever written.
Well, thank you. But it digs into the heart of the problem for this team is that the offense is predictable at this point, and they don't have enough credible threats on the field to make their systems run. And the vibe I've been getting from the coaching staff is we're going to do the same, but better. We're going to do what we do, but we're going to improve 1% each day. And that's going to be how we win more often. And then that becomes, what's your matchup? And are you better than those guys? Instead of, okay, there's going to be subtle adjustments every week. And I'm hoping, because I think Mike Yurcich is a really good offensive coordinator, but he's playing the metaphor I made this week, or simile, is that he's a lead guitarist playing rhythm left-handed, because he's being asked to do things that he is not familiar with. And he even admitted this, in a conference call this week, talking about trying to use the tight ends and some of the challenges that go into those things. And those are all incredibly valid things that if you're not a guy who's been raised in that system to know and how to navigate, and you're learning all these things, and I'm not saying that he's never used tight ends before, but using them in this way and working through these problems, this is what you get. This is the offense you get. And at times I felt like this 2 tight end package is bolted onto his passing attack, and it's like they're running 2 separate offenses. On top of the fact that the quarterback is Sean Clifford and all the problems that presents there, and some of the things he talked about of, we want to give the same looks each week to the running back so they get better and they see the same things and they are growing and learning. And that's great, but the defense is growing and learning about what you're doing. But the college football had this offense figured out in week 4. And I think that this game needs to be a pivot. This game needs to be an offensive shift. You don't have to radically do things differently, but you do have to introduce some new challenging concepts, break some tendencies, and add more threats to the field. Because if you're going to run 2 tight ends and Theo Johnson struggles as a run blocker, that is a historically known thing, and you don't target him, what is the point of his presence on the football field other than to bring more defenders into the box? That is not a winning formula. And I think that it's within this group to be good, and I think it's within this offensive coordinator to be good, but something has to give. And Minnesota has a good defense. I wouldn't say they're exceptional. I wouldn't say that they have some standout elite qualities. 27 is a phenomenal safety. 55 is a really good run blocker. So if Penn State crowds the box, 3 tight ends, and they bring those athletes in closer, play into that strategy, that's to Minnesota's advantage. Now, again, I've said all week, I'm not an offense coordinator. These are my observations. They've got to find a way forward, but until I see them do that, I don't have any faith that this offense can score more than 24 points in a game. 20, and that's the height of what I would be comfortable saying. So how is Penn State going to score points? They need to get ahead of Minnesota so that Minnesota's scheme doesn't work, because what they do is they suck everybody in and they run RPOs and they throw the ball downfield. And if you allow, this is what I think the saving grace is for Penn State. They can crowd the box and play aggressive man-to-man coverage because there's not a lot of rub routes. Minnesota likes to spread the field and they'll attack the slot. So it's going to be a big game for who's ever out there in the slot. Jonathan Sutherland or Daquan Hardy. And that's going to be a big matchup in the game. And Minnesota doesn't have great receivers, but Penn State has struggled with those 2 players on the football field. So I'm also giving you a lot of doom and gloom here, but the problems that have come up, I don't see a solution if you continue down the path that you have with both sides of the football.
Happy you brought up Tyler Nubin. I think he's incredibly important. He's 27 for Minnesota safety. Incredibly good player.
He's so good.
Yeah,
I watched him. They use him a lot like Brisker. That the way Penn State used Brisker, where he's a deep free safety, he is behind the line of scrimmage, and he's in the box a lot, so he can do a little bit of all of it.
Yeah, I forget who was there. Who was the safety they had 2 years ago? Minnesota. I'm talking about, man. It was
Winfield.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yes.
I felt like compared to, just remembering that 2019 game, I think it is by now. But he's going to just be a really important player. I mean, they got to find ways to. I don't know really know how you're gonna go about it. But I mean, he's been, I don't want to say a game changer for them, but just somebody you got to avoid, or find ways to keep the ball away from. So
attack 14. That's my plan. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, attack number 14. That's what I would be trying to do. And 11. Like, I do think that there are plays you can make against this team too. Like, that's the other thing, is there are plays to make. They run a lot of cover two high safeties. If you've got great tight ends, run them down the middle of the field against those, but then you got to have the quarterback that wants to throw those places.
Mhm.
So, I don't know how it's going to go. Minnesota's a good defense. They're also beatable. Minnesota has a good offensive line, but they're also really beatable. Like if you put them in 3rd and 7, the right tackle is not a good pass protector. Like just how it always is. They've got these gigantic, long offensive linemen. They work well together, but the size and the power per pound is not what you would think. But they can absolutely shred Penn State's defense. So I don't know. What was your official pick? Let's end with this. What was your official pick?
I think I did like 21-20 Penn State, something like that. Maybe I did like 23-20. I mean, I don't have confidence. I just don't. If Tanner Morgan's playing this game, I think I pick Minnesota. I just don't. If it's that 3rd string quarterback, that kid, I mean, he can't beat Penn State. But I don't know what we're in for with this whole quarterback and news drama.
And Penn State's quarterback situation too.
Right, that too.
I haven't talked about that.
I think Clifford's going to play, but I don't know. I mean, to me, I felt like that was more so like if the game was close, I don't know if Clifford comes out of that game, but like we don't know, and we'll never really know. I mean, we have obviously connections and people we talk to in Lash, but like injuries are still nothing that we can really get. I mean, it's like the one thing that is always, always, always off limits. So I don't want to pretend that I have a ton of information there, but to me, I would think Clifford's going to play in this game. I think Tanner's the bigger, more questionable, player, and we'll find out at 5:30 or so Saturday night. But yeah, I just see low scoring. But the only reason I kind of see low scoring for Minnesota is because they're going to be running the ball, and we thought that kind of for Michigan last week, and see how that worked out. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see, man. But there's just not a lot right now that I'm very optimistic about.
I had 24-21 Penn State, and like I said, that's just I gave them 4 points for the whiteout. So I hope Nick Singleton saves you. That seems to be the game plan this year. That'll do it for the BWI Daily Edition. Have fun. Enjoy the game.
It's going to be beautiful, everyone. The one thing I'm really jealous I can't go out and tailgate. I mean, tomorrow's like 70 and perfect. Like you could not ask for better weather. So, hey, man, maybe Penn State will romp them and we'll all forget about that Michigan game. But it's hard to get out of your head as of a week later.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this is the next 65 to 70 plays for the Penn State offense could completely change my opinion about it because they can redefine what this team does. And, the last nugget I'll drop before we get out of here is I think Penn State's best system that they run on offense, their counter plays in the run game, they have a chance to work in this game. I've seen Illinois did a pretty decent job pulling and counters and things like that. So, again, 27-55, both those guys are going to be a part, and you're not going to win all of them, but you might be able to crack a few. Like I said, if those numbers that I gave you earlier, they're the ones in the front on run support, you might have a chance. That'll do it for the BWI Daily Edition. I will
11-14, everyone. Go ahead. Take us away, T-Bag.
No, you nailed it. Thank you. That was thanks for remembering. That'll do it for today. Make sure you tune in after the game. Live analysis, live conversation about what happened during the whiteout. You're already up. You're already amped. Just stay up. We'll break it all down for you. I'm Thomas Rankar. We'll talk to you then.